украинской территории и проистекать с украинской
We
территории.
need to stop any war on the territory of Ukraine. I am sure that a solution will be found. This is to be negotiated with Ukraine as well. Ukraine's team found some reasons again to delay these negotiations, but I think they must be conducted.
Joined by Scott Lucas. He is a professor of international politics at the University of Birmingham. Thank you so much, Professor, for joining us on the program. I want to start off by asking you about what you make out of the comments Lavrov made earlier. To sum it up a bit, he indicated that this crisis will be solved and a ceasefire is possible.
Well, the first rule of thumb is to trust Sergey Lavrov as far as you can throw him. This is the same Sergey Lavrov who set up Russia's war last week by lying that genocide was going on inside Ukraine, by lying that you can't even speak Russian in Ukraine. This is the same Sergey Lavrov who a couple of days ago effectively said that the Ukrainian government was led by Nazis, which is interesting given that President Zelensky is Jewish. So when Sergey Lavrov comes off and all of a sudden says, oh, we're interested in discussing security for everyone, let's take that apart. First of all, Russian forces have not halted. They have escalated the attacks, including the use of cruise missiles on Ukrainian cities. Russian forces have not stopped in place, but have taken over one city, Kherson, in southern Ukraine, and have surrounded and issued an ultimatum to another one, Mariupol. Russian forces have killed hundreds of civilians in the past couple of days. So if Sergey Lavrov is serious, first of all, drop the bogus demand for denazification and for demilitarization, because that is not what is at issue here. And secondly, pull back the Russian forces. I have to be honest with you. One of two things is happening here. They're probably linked. One is that Sergey Lavrov is trying to buy some time by feigning diplomacy while the military attacks continue, and Russia tries to take more territory. And secondly, he's trying to cover up for Russian problems in the war. The Russians have taken territory in the south along the Black Sea, but they have failed to detain or kill Ukrainian leaders and collapse the government. And they have failed to get into Kiev and Kharkiv, Ukraine's second city. So in effect, he's buying time so that Russia can regroup and possibly step up its attempts.
Professor, there's also another crisis that's unfolding on the borders of Ukraine, of people trying to reach some safety, not to mention some of them being mistreated because of their ethnicity, but hundreds of thousands of more people could continue to flee. They are expecting more and more people to exit the country. Poland is lifting the heavy weights, but it can only do that for so long. So where will the breaking point of this crisis, this humanitarian crisis, be?
The breaking point depends on one individual. That's Vladimir Putin. Vladimir Putin, even with attacks which have been far limited, and I mean, as horrible as the attacks have been on Ukraine, they have not yet been on the scale of what Russia did in Chechnya 20 years ago, or what they did more recently in Syria. So as long as the Russians continue to bomb and threaten to destroy Ukrainian cities, people are going to flee. They want to find somewhere. We have over 1 million Ukrainians who have left the country. There are others who are persisting, who are staying inside the country. But no, when we talk about a humanitarian crisis, two things. One is, it is imperative on all of us in the international community to assist Ukrainians. And two, it is imperative to identify the cause of this crisis, not to deflect. And that is the Russian military operations. You cannot stop the humanitarian crisis until you stop those Russian operations.
What happens in the aftermath of all of this? On one hand, we have cities left in ruins, thousands displaced, and most probably two world powers still against each other, not being able to come to terms.
Well, that's a great question, because what it identifies is that this war, which is still only in its 8th day, is that we're only at the starting point of this. That even if Russia occupies most of Ukraine, you will then have a Ukrainian insurgency, and you will have Russia, who has a weakened economy, under pressure, facing the fact that it has destroyed a country, and is it ever possible to rebuild it? Remember that the insurgency in Afghanistan took a decade. before the Soviet Union left. Now, Ukraine's a different country from Afghanistan. It's a different situation 40 years later. But you still have a fundamental that having broken the country, even if Russia takes control for a short period of time, that this may come at the cost of the Russian nation. Not just the economic sanctions, but the slow erosion of support amongst Russian people in a position where Moscow is isolating itself from most of the world. Because I take issue with one thing you said, and it may be a slip. This is not just the two superpowers. This is not US versus Russia. Those who have lined up against Russia over this, the US, of course, but also European countries, including the European Union, Turkey, countries in Africa, in Asia. The United Nations voted 141-5 to condemn this Russian invasion. So this is a question of the international community versus Russia trying to save the Ukrainian people.
Professor Scott Lucas, it's always a pleasure speaking to you. Thank you.